Brad, do you think that wealthy people just want others to suffer?
Well, I know I want other people to suffer, but I'm not wealthy. So,
Well, according to this TikToker, that is the massive plan going on behind the scenes in the US. Let's roll this clip.
Do you want to know why the wealthy class really don't want us to have healthcare and education like most other first world countries do? Countries less rich than ours have citizens that just get given education and healthcare. Not ours. It's because they want to keep the citizens in this country desperate. People who are desperate for education, for healthcare, for the basics, they're much more easily exploitable. People who don't owe $80,000 in student loans, people who don't have to pay an ungodly amount of money for health insurance every month, they're not as easy to exploit because they have much less to lose. Do you know how many people in this country keep their jobs particularly because they need the healthcare, or because their student loans and their debt is so high that they need to be employed to pay that debt back? And the system just goes round and round and round. And three major groups of people have all homogenized into one single circle jerk. And at the top, there are neither Democrats or Republicans. There are the rich. And they all get along just fine, let me tell you that. And what they trickle down out of all their corporations and with all their money and power is the illusion of choice. Let me give you a few examples. We like to believe that we can choose our health insurance, but have you ever noticed that every single healthcare plan is essentially just the same? It's a high premium and they cover nothing. Car insurance, same thing. Go to the grocery store, you have so many things to choose from, but they're all owned by like 4 or 5 companies. You can go to any college you want, but for the most part, you're going to get an education that tells you that you should be spit right back out into the system and go get a job, be a cog in the wheel. Oh, and by the way, you owe us $120,000. My point is, no matter what you choose, no matter where you go, no matter which selection you make, the outcome is essentially the same. But they want us to believe that there's an illusion of choice, because as long as you're choosing, you're free. But we're not free when all the choices are exactly the same.
Brad, I can't explain how I felt watching this video other than like sheer joy, because she's just stumbling all around the main point and still not hitting it. And it's like you are actually calling out so many of the issues that people on the right are also concerned about. But ironically, they're the issues that people on the right and many wealthy donors are trying to fix, like trying to get you out of the indoctrination of school. She's sitting here complaining about higher ed and being indoctrinated by it. And it's like, yeah, the left has taken over academia for decades now. She's complaining about high insurance premiums and not getting much in return. It's like, yeah, the left has made it where you have to be on these insurance plans, and they ruined them with Obamacare.
she's complaining about Obamacare.
Yeah, you're mad about progressive policies that have been put into place. You're mad that your health insurance is attached to your job. Who do you think came up with that? Not Republicans.
It's literally government regulation that that employers must provide healthcare. That's what the healthcare market never emerged like that until that regulation, and that's why people feel trapped to their job for their healthcare, because of a government regulation. I mean, I felt gaslit by this video. One, she's like, she's describing this mythical America where we have no welfare state, like this rugged capitalist society where if you don't get healthcare or anything. I'm sorry. Has ma'am never heard of Medicaid? Has ma'am never heard of food stamps? Has she never heard of the Obama phones? Like, you can literally get, without working, if you're poor, government health care paid for by the taxpayer. There already is that for people that can't afford it. You get Pell Grants to go to college if you are poor. I mean, there is all sorts of things that are there for people already, and yet she's acting like they just don't exist because they want to keep us all poor and desperate, and so they can exploit us, which doesn't make any sense for too many reasons to count. But I just have to take issue with the fact that she's pointing out a bunch of industries that have been messed up by the government. Like higher ed is the perfect example. Why is college so expensive? It wasn't, but then the federal government flooded it with almost blank check student loans at a subsidized and unsubsidized rate, and that jacked up the price by a ton. Then they started having these government bureaucrats at these public colleges waste money and grow the administrative state on campus, and they really are to blame in large part, the government, for the high cost of college these days. And yet she's pointing that to a fact of how capitalism is leaving everyone desperate and how the rich are these evil cabal of, and also like her example at the grocery store is just like so wrong. You go into a grocery store, there are so many choices. I go to the ice cream aisle and there's 20 different kinds of ice cream, because food like groceries is actually a mostly free market in a lot of ways.
I'll
Well,
push
so
back on that.
not on the production side, on
Yeah.
the sale side. So obviously food production is heavily regulated, but I mean on the sale side, these prices are all allowed to come up and down. There's no price setting. There's food stamps for a small slice of society, but people are mostly paying out of pocket. There's no intermediary. Like an actual grocery store commerce is a largely free-ish market. Food production is another story. But you have a lot of competition among food brands. The idea that it's all just 2 or 3 companies that own everything in your grocery store is not true. And in fact, food is very affordable in the United States. We have people who are too fat and eat too much. We do not have I mean, there are some cases, sure, but the problem is not that people aren't getting fed in America, right? Because the rich want us hungry to keep us desperate. The problem is that we're eating a little too much.
Well, she had so many flawed points. I mean, one, the idea that you are less desperate or less dependent if you are getting all of your essential services from the government makes absolutely no sense. And that was sort of her premise. Furthermore, I can't stand when people point to these other countries to get all these things, blah, 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 and they've done zero research into the realities of that. Yes, smaller countries do provide things like healthcare and some student loans and things like that. But I found in my research that the average student debt in many of these countries is still around $20,000 per year because they still have to pay for living costs. So yes, you get cheaper college, but guess what? You could actually do college much cheaper here. You don't have to go to an expensive school. You can still find schools where you can go for $4,000 or $5,000 a year. That's perfectly manageable. These are choices that you make and the kinds of education that you want to pursue. When it comes to healthcare, yes, they get basic healthcare, but many of them have to carry additional insurance policies and come to the U.S. to get basic services because the waits
They're on
are so
long
long
waiting
and
lists.
they're
Healthcare is
going
being
bankrupt
rationed.
over there, and they can't actually get basic services or surgeries in a timely manner before they die. So I'm really tired of that narrative. It's absolutely bogus. And furthermore, I think you're going to see systems like England's fall very, very, very soon. So if you're not paying attention to that, please don't run your mouth about the U.S. healthcare system because you really don't know what you're talking about. I would agree that you should not have to be tied to insurance plans. I agree that the insurance market is very, very crappy in the US. But again, that traces back to government policies that the left has forced on the American people, like Obamacare. Meanwhile, the wealthy people I know are pushing for things like direct primary care, telehealth expansion, deregulating healthcare, trying to get these things out of the way and make it more affordable for you. So you're mad at the wrong people. And I just think that she continues to have this idea that like the rich are after you. No, I don't think that's the case. In fact, I've seen most of the rich have a lot of like guilt for being wealthy and often are found on the left, or if you do find them on the right, they're very involved in charity. They're very involved in trying to fix things in the system to make them better for you. So if you're going to be mad at these things, do the basic research of tracing back their origins. You should know that having your health insurance tied to your job came from like FDR and unions. It didn't come from Republicans, right? And if you're mad about being indoctrinated into school systems, guess who's trying to break kids out of them? The right, with things like school choice. And again, you're just mad at all the wrong people. You're identifying some correct problems, but you're not even, looking a little bit beneath the surface to figure out what's truly going on. And you're not doing enough research on other countries too to know that while they might have some of these things paid for, they have far less disposable income than Americans because you have to pay for it. The middle class and the poor people, you still have to pay so much more money in taxes just to get those kinds of services that you have far less disposable income. And I don't think that that's a good trade-off for most people. If you ask me, do I want to pay 20% more of my income just to get healthcare and 4 years of school? No, that's a really bad trade-off. That doesn't actually make a lot of financial sense. So oh gosh, the fact that these people just come on TikTok and pop off and think that they're doing something and they just look so silly. And this is something like, seriously, if you're mad about something, do the basics to figure out what created the problem in the first place. You've got the internet right at your fingertips. It's literally in your pocket at all times. There's no excuse for being this uninformed.